Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the After Maghrib podcast, dear brothers and sisters. Wherever you're watching or listening from around the world, if you're here for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're hearing us from. If you've been tuning in, you'll know that we've been talking about Karbala, Imam Hussein, Ashura, and talking about the historics and how it applies to us contemporarily today. And today we're going to do the same sort of thing. We are going to talk about Imam Zayn al-Abidin, alayhi salam, our fourth Imam. Is he underappreciated? Is he undervalued? And what lessons can we take away from him? Especially when we talk about recent news, current affairs such as the burning of the Qur'an, and of course a lot of the pressure that faced Muslims in the East as well as the West. And as always, I'm joined by my very eloquent and my respected brother, Sayed Ali Radhawi. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you keeping?
Alhamdulillah, keeping well. Yourself?
I'm okay, bro. Alhamdulillah, yeah, it's now, we're recording 10 days after Ashura. So it's like it's an odd phase in a way, because it feels like Ashura feels like a while ago. And it's only been 10 days.
It's as if we've reached the peak,
Yeah.
but the morning still continues.
It does, it does. And we have to remember not to let it slip. So we still wear black, we still attend majalis, we still observe the practices or rituals, we still cry when you hear Imam Hussein's name, and we hear the tragedies of Karbala and what happened after as well. And in these days is where we mourn the post-Ashura period. So we cannot let it slip. Very, very important.
We can't, and you know, we're leading up to the Shahada of Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein, Imam Sajjad Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. And I think, you know, you've asked the question, do we like underrate him? You know, do we like forget his life? Do we neglect what he stood for and everything? And I think we do. If I'm honest, I think we do that very much. I don't know if it's because Ashura takes over his life.
Yeah. Because
normally we mention Imam Sajjad only when it comes to, for example, his journey towards Shaam. There's lots of things happen before Shaam and after Shaam. And I think let's start here. The question is, for example, on the day of Ashura, on the 10th of Muharram, there are those that claim, for example, Imam Zayn al-Abidin did not stand with his father. He failed to join his father in jihad. There is that, you know, argument some people use. That's what actually happened.
So Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was not ill when he came to Karbala. When he arrived in Karbala, he fell ill. And narrations and history say that he had a stomach bug. To the point where he couldn't stand up. But sometimes we hear in lectures and we hear in Musibah that the Imam was frail, and it makes it sound like he, astaghfirullah, but like he's an old man and he's incapable and he was weak. A'udhu billah. But the reality is such where the Imam showed incredible physical strength and mental strength. The physical strength to firstly bear what he bore, in the sense of being water deprived, being in the heat of Karbala, being without access to facilities and what he needs to recover, clearly. No access to doctors and medicine and all of that. At the same time, the mental pressure, seeing his beloved father, his beloved family, his companions all massacred in front of him, seeing his womenfolk, the children all completely harassed and abused in front of his own eyes. And on top of that, being the only male to survive the onslaught of Karbala, to continue his journey on foot, of course, with the pressures that he faced, and we're going to talk about that, I'm sure. And then obviously to go through what he went through, to make sure Islam survived, to make sure Karbala was not forgotten, and then of course to live for decades afterwards as well. So it just blows my mind, because I feel like sometimes when we talk about Imam Sajjad, we say, oh, he was ill in Karbala. What could he do? This was Allah's will.
Yeah.
Like Allah knew that there has to be hujjah on earth. There has to be a sign of Allah on earth. And when we know obviously on the day of Ashura, he told one of the companions, pass me my stick and my sword. I'm going to stand up. He stood up. Imam Hussein said, sit down. He said, the earth would swallow itself if there was no hujjah after me and you were to take your life. Or give your life rather.
Yeah, no, you mentioned a very nice point. You said his mental state.
Yeah.
And not to belittle his mental state, I'm sure he has the best of states of minds. It is not easy to, as you said, you know, there's a state of thirst, There's, seeing the enemy coming and taking away the family of Rasulullah, ultimately killing them, giving them shahada. And then at the same time, there's women and children.
Yeah.
And it's not easy for anyone, let alone the son of Imam Hussein, to see his father in such a position and being so weak due to his illness. Look, we're not talking about spiritual weakness, physical weakness. We're talking about not being able to stand up and join his father in jihad. And that's not something easy for the Imam. But as you said, Allah is the best of planners. And it's very true, because if we actually look into this properly, thinking now, had Imam Zayn al-Abidin joined his father, fought alongside the companions and his family in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the 10th of Muharram, on the day of Ashura, there will be no hujjah today. So surely there was a great plan. Allah is the best of planners, because had Imam Hussein allowed his son, because I heard, actually I've read, Imam Zayn al-Abidin did want to fight. Imam Hussein told him, no, you cannot, you cannot leave the tent and go out, because you need to remain alive. And that's when I believe he passed on the imamate, letting him know, for example, you are to continue this path. And you mentioned that point where he said, get me a stick and get me a sword. The stick for him for the strength to stand up, and the sword for him to fight in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But ultimately, had it not been for that decision, Imam Hussein telling him, no, you cannot come onto the battlefield. There will be no Imam al-Baqir. There will be no Imam al-Sadiq. There will be no Imam al-Rida. There will be no Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. The line will end. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knew then and there that I personally believe that sickness or that illness, or some say it was an injury he was recovering from, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. It's something from Allah's plan.
And when Sayyidah Zainab say, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, maybe there's, when the more you learn about Karbala, the more beauty you find in it. And when you first hear that hadith from Bibi Zainab, alayhi salam, where she says, I saw nothing but beauty, originally you're like, what, how does that make sense? But the more you think about it, and year on year we attend majalis, we get stuck to understand. And subhanAllah, you've just opened that gateway for me to think of another perspective, that maybe that was something she saw. Maybe she saw that Allah's divine plan in allowing Imam Sajjad to remain protected meant that the mission would continue until the end of time.
Well, because had he been killed, or had he been martyred,
we wouldn't be here.
We would have the Islam of Yazid and Muawiyah.
Yes, we would.
We wouldn't have the Islam
we wouldn't have
of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
When in the court of Yazid, when Imam Sajjad, of course, gave that eloquent speech, and we'll talk about what happened after Ashura. There's some really important things to talk about. But he says, if I'm not mistaken, we have been gifted 6, and we have we possess 6 qualities, and we've been gifted 7. In terms of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And one of which the 7th that he mentions is the Mahdi. He talks about, he says, we have Hassan and Hussein and Hamza and Muhammad and Fatima and Ali and Mahdi, if I'm not mistaken, the 7. That is so important. Imam Sajjad at that time, 61 AH, mentioned Imam al-Mahdi, and here we are in the year 1444 or 5, if I'm not mistaken.
1445.
1445? Yeah. New Year. Yeah, New Year. So because of that, and him prophesying, foretelling that is so important. I just want to bring our attention to Yasir, of course, that everyone at home knows. Yasir, who is with us behind the scenes today. Assalamu alaikum, Yasir.
That's done. It's finished.
Khadim al-Hussein.
Inshallah, ajma'in.
What are your thoughts on this?
So basically, what I think about is just that some people sometimes say that, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam didn't achieve martyrdom on the day of Ashura. So maybe his rank or his importance drops. That's why we don't remember him. But do you dare to say the same for, example, Sayyidah Zainab, or Sayyidah Ruqayyah, or Sukaina, or Ramla, or the wives of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Because Imam al-Mahdi Ajjallah Ta'ala Fajr Sharif even says that what I think about the most after Ashura is Shaam. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, they asked him, why do you cry? What happened? Is it because of Ashura? He says, Shaam. 3
times, yeah.
That what happened in Shaam, what happened in Syria, on the way to Syria, I'll never forget. That we remember the Masa'ib where blood was dropping down from his neck, his arms, Sayyidah Ruqayyah having chains around her neck, Sayyidah Zainab getting whipped, her hijab getting taken away from her. These things isn't simple, especially for Imam Zayn al-Abidin being the man, the leader now of these women, of these followers, of his family, having to live through this and see it, and knowing that he can't do anything about it.
And bro, you think about it when we talk about Sayyidah Zainab, Salamullahi alayha, and when you said Asham, 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 why was Sham so difficult? Obviously, the journey from Karbala after that, and the mental state, the mental perseverance Imam had to have, from there to then walk towards Sham. And Sayyidah Zainab says, if I'm not mistaken, Suq al-Hamadiyya, if I'm not mistaken, is correct, is now in Sham.
Suq al-Hamadiyya.
And if for those who have been will know, obviously, very tall buildings. Sayyidah Zainab says, I saw them pour boiling water from the windows onto the face of my nephew.
La ilaha illallah.
And Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, in that suq, he saw, who was it? Sahl bin Sa'd al-Sa'idi, companion of Rasulullah. And he saw him, and he said, come here, Sahl. He came, he said, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, what happened? You know, what? He says, go over there and get that cloth for me. He goes, he brings the cloth. He says, I thought he's going to cover his body. He said, no, I need this cloth because from Karbala, I've had this chain around my neck with spikes. And I need something to protect my neck.
Between the chain and the neck.
Yeah. Bro, after all of that, you think about it. When he went to the court of Yazid, Yazid is there, and he's playing with the head of the Holy Imam Hussein, with a stick. Okay? And then he starts mocking the Imam. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam stands up. At that point, he tells Sayyidah Zainab, take a seat down. I'm going to say something. He starts speaking. He says, and I'm paraphrasing because the sermon is very long and those who have read it or heard it is incredible. I am the son of the one who visited Sidratul Muntaha. I am the son of Rasulullah. I am the son of Sayyidatul Nisa al-Alameen. I am the son who is the annihilator of the idols. I am the son of Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. I am Zain al-Abidin, the son of the one who's slain on Karbala. And then, what does he do? Yazid says, stop this man. I don't want to hear anymore. Start the adhan. And the mu'adhan starts, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. At that point, what happens? Imam Sajjad stands up. He says, you're saying ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He says, whose grandfather is Rasulullah? Mine or yours? Because if you say he's yours, you're a liar. But if you say he's mine, then why did you kill his family? And at that point, there was pin drop silence. If he didn't do that, then the people in Sham would not have had the knowledge. You know, there's so many hadith and stories about people who would come and say to the Imam, curse be on you, you rebels. He'll say, do you know who I am? Do you know which? And he started naming multiple ayahs of the Qur'an. He said, do you know who these are revealed about? And they say, yeah, Ala Muhammad. He says, I am Ala
We are Ala Muhammad.
You know, if the Imam didn't do that propagation, we wouldn't be where we are.
Oh, and for the Imam to give that sermon, by the way, if I remember it well, was that, you know, as they approached the court of Yazid, you know, people were now questioning who are these people, and then there was a thing where people saying these are rebels who, you know, stood against the Khilafah of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and then and then the Imam will give the examples that you gave. For example, have you heard of this verse? Have you heard of that verse? And he will say these verses refer to us, and people were shocked. Is it true, Yazid? Like, these are the family of Rasulullah, and you've done so and so. So Yazid at that point, he was like, you know what, tables are turning a little.
Yeah.
Let's bring someone to speak good of me and my father Muawiyah. So I think very famously they made like a makeshift pulpit over there.
Yes.
And he called one of his men to come and speak good of Yazid and good of Muawiyah and good of the generation of Abu Sufyan, and which they done so. And then that's when Imam Zain al-Abidin stood up and said, wow be upon you. You know, if you allow me to talk, let me say something. And Yazid was like, no way. And then the people there was like, you know, if you are saying no, why are you scared?
Yeah, you've got nothing to hide. Why you
let the man talk?
Yeah.
So eventually Yazid had to, you know, agree to this and let the man talk. And that's when he went on and gave a sermon. And I've paraphrased, you've paraphrased a bit, and I've got some a bit here, if I can share it as well. You know, where the Imam goes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, praise be to Allah who has no beginning and the everlasting who has no end. Paraphrasing again, continues on to say, O people, we have been bestowed 6 qualities and 7 merits by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala: knowledge, forbearance, eloquence, valor, etc. Then he goes to say, those who know me, and those who don't know me, get to know me through my ancestry. I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. I am the son of the one who was bestowed revelation by Allah. I am the son of Muhammad al-Mustafa. I am the son of the person who fought against enemies with 2 swords. I am the son of Ali al-Murtada, the approved one. I am the son of Fatima al-Zahra. I am the son of Hussein, the one killed in Karbala. And it was at that point, as you mentioned, where Yazid said, stop the sermon, let's end it. Let's do the adhan, it's time for salah.
Yeah. And
the beautiful thing is, I'm just going to re-mention what you said, when the muadhin was like, Allahu Akbar, the Imam said, surely God is great.
Yeah.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. It's like, I bear, there is no witness but God, no problem. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And that's exactly the point when he said, Muhammad Rasulullah, is he my grandfather or is he your grandfather? And that's, they say, where Yazid eventually had to, like, for example, to stop the commotion and stop the uprising that's happening in people's minds, not physical uprising, where, he had to, like, release the Imam and release those he brought captive. But it's a very, very,
it's very
difficult time for the Imam.
Very, very difficult.
Because before even reaching there, some question this, but before the Imam even reaching to Shaam, he buried Imam al-Hussein. He buried the companions of Imam al-Hussein. He buried the children, his own brothers, Ali al-Akbar, Ali al-Asghar. He saw so much.
When the Imam, the story is such where when Banu Asad, the tribe in Karbala, it was said that their women were embarrassed that the men of their tribe didn't join Imam Hussein. So after Karbala happened, after the battle happened, they told their men, they said, if you're not going to fight with the Imam, at least go and bury them. Go and bury the Shuhada. So, okay, fine. They go out, and in narrations it says that they had no idea where to begin. How do we match this head with which body? And at that point, they said, we saw a man walking in the distance wearing black. He came closer. They said, who are you? He said, I'm Ali ibn al-Hussein. Alayhi salam. And he said, why are you here? He goes, I'm here. The Imam said to them, why are you here? They said, oh, we just want to see what's happening. He said, no, tell me the truth. He said, we're here to bury the Shuhada of Karbala. He said, let me do what I need to do. He said, I'm going to give you guys 3 tasks. Bury 3 graves, 1 for certain members of the family, 1 for the companions, and 1 for Habib ibn Mudahar. And then, of course, the Imam buried Imam Hussein, alayhi salam. And then continues on about Hazrat Abbas.
He goes to the Furat. And he takes his prayer mat.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And what happens? He
tries to pick up what is left of Abul Fadl Abbas, salamullahi alayhi. And that's, imagine picking up Abul Fadl Abbas in your prayer mat.
And it says when he picked up the left side, the right would fall down. When he picked up the right side, the left would fall down. It's a very difficult, when we talk about modern day mental health, I know we're slightly veering off, but I think it's really important, When we talk about modern day mental health, we now live in a system, Western, like post-colonial system, which is very reliant on mainstream healthcare and mainstream methods of resolving mental health challenges. The Imam, alayhi salam, challenged his own mental health by dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembrance of Allah, and at the same time he mourned. How many times we read about the Imam bursting into tears and the Imam's eyes were sore, blistered. This is because the Imam was hurt. Like, it's normal, and like today, I'm not saying that modern day techniques don't work. I'm saying that remembering Allah and at the same time accepting your emotional vulnerabilities is okay. It's allowed. As a man, if we're talking about men, why are we bottling things up? You're allowed to mourn your situation. You're allowed to grieve for your situation. But you have to remember that everything is the will of Allah and turn back to Allah.
Oh, I think sadly, when it comes to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, I think we keep him at a place where he's just surrounds Karbala. There's nothing else to it. Even when I always hear from the pulpits whenever we refer to the Imam, he's always being referred to as someone who was always crying, someone who's always mourning. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There was more to it, as you mentioned, the dhikr Allah. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin is very famously known for example, Makarim al-Akhlaq. He's very famously known for Sahih al-Sajjadiyah. He's very famously known for Risalat al-Huquq, Treatise of Rights, all of these things.
Say, just to add on to your point, it's that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Salaamullah alayhi, was very young in Karbala. Was 23, 24. And his imamah carried on for 34 to 35 years.
Yeah.
His martyrdom was achieved at the age of 57. So do we ever
Same age as
think...
Imam Hussein.
Same age as Imam Hussein, sallallahu alayhi. So do we ever think, what did he do for 34 years?
Exactly.
Does anyone say what happened after Ashura?
Well, we sort of neglect it.
Because for 34 years, I'll tell you, he didn't just cry in his house. He didn't.
You know this.
He didn't just... Sorry, he didn't just sit at home remembering what happened to his father and family. Or he didn't just give us a book called Sahifa Sajjadi and that's it. It's just a dua book.
I heard he really revived the dying Islam Yazid brang. He brought it back alive.
Imam Zayn al-Abidin was given the task that now that Islam is saved, Imam Hussein saved the message. It hasn't died. You now need to revive it in the people's hearts to remind them what it is.
The Imam had three major challenges post Karbala. Okay, the first was to proclaim his imamah publicly. Because if imagine in Islam was in the lowest of the low, like the pits of low. You have animals who claim that they are the heads of the religion. Okay? At that point, for him to come out and say, no, Imam Hussein died, I'm the Imam. No, the Imam had to go about it in a smart way. The second challenge the Imam had, in books, it says, books of history, it says that it's like when you break a tasbih and you scatter all over the floor the beads. The Imam had to bring the community back together, to weld them back together like you're fixing a broken tasbih.
SubhanAllah.
The third thing the Imam had to do is he had to expound the knowledge of the religion far and wide, haqq, to the point where he laid the foundation. We talk about Imam Baqir al-Ulum, for example. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, we talked about how Imam Sadiq had 100,000 plus students. That didn't just happen overnight. 50 years
Things
prior,
yeah.
Karbala happened, right? So what happened in that period? Imam Sajjad was the pinnacle of propagation, tabligh. Imam Sajjad laid the foundation. You know, they say Imam Sajjad went Hajj 20 times by foot to Mecca. Like he was back and forth. He was continuously traveling. He was continuously teaching. He was spreading. Every chance he got, he would tell people, this is what I saw in the younger years of my life. This is what we need to do in the future.
And mind you, he done all of this whilst being surveillanced and being spied on by Yazid's people and then his successor.
How did he get away with it? Yeah,
it's from what I know, Sahifa Sajjadiyya is not a book of dua.
It wasn't intended to be that.
It wasn't intended to be, listen, you want du'as? Here's du'as from Sahifa. No, Sahifa Sajjadiyya was a way that Imam Zayn al-Abidin would teach his students about Islam. For example, true tawassul or true tawheed by talking to them, by saying, listen, this is a dua, let's recite it together, let's memorize it together. And through these du'as, he would mention stuff like my father, indeed my father was killed thirsty. Indeed, my Imam Ali is the successor, the lion of Allah. Stuff like that, the brother of Rasulullah. And by dropping what we call these bars, these hints, is by that, instilling that little part in people's hearts. From there a seed then is planted. From there the tree is starting to grow. And that is what the other Imams had to do. It wasn't just that Imam Zayn al-Abidin's job was teach them Islam now, all of it. No. Bit by bit. Then Imam Baqir alayhi salam comes and says, this is what my father taught you. Let's expand. Now let's bring in philosophy, science. Let me show you what I know. And from then Imam Ja'far Sadiq took over and said, from what my father taught me, let me show you this. And then the Ja'fariyya school, that university that was born, came into life. But as Ahmed said, that didn't happen overnight. It took calculations, it took planning, it took the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it took the actions of the Imams.
And that lives on till today. You know, subhanAllah, the Ad'iyah, they say we are the school of the Ahlul Bayt. Alhamdulillah, this is something we should be proud of. And the Imams, you know, they did a very good job at this. For us to reach us, like even the du'as, the supplications of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, I think it's just over 51 du'as that we have. And it covers almost like everything we ever want to pray for, anything we want to supplicate about. And what I like from the works of the Imam is his treatise of rights. I really love it. And if someone has not read this, please go online. PDFs are available online. Just search treatise of rights, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Sajjad, and just read them.
Yeah.
And learn the rights of your mother, learn the rights of your father, the rights of your, your tongue, your eyes, everything. The rights of your friend, the rights of your neighbor, the rights of your teacher, the rights of everything.
And again, those are just foundations.
Yeah.
So you can tell that his plan isn't, let me teach them Islam right now from page 1 to page 100. I'm just going to tell them the bits for them to start.
Imagine if
Because everyone knows Salah. It's been about 50 years now. Everyone should know Salah, go to Hajj.
The problem was at the time that Salah was known, but the sanctity of Salah was violated.
Exactly, so that's how he revives
the sanctity of religion was violated in its core.
So that's the Imam's job.
At a point where on the day of Ashura, you have two different jama'as happening, and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is being shot with arrows, like we keep mentioning in every single podcast we've done so far. The sanctity of Salah was violated. The sanctity of Islam at its core was violated.
Even the adhan at the core of Yazid.
The adhan at the core of Yazid. Like, hypocrites, munafiqeen, like all of them burn in hell. And there's a reason why. It's because these guys, they claim that we are the owners of this religion. Bro, you are nothing. We're talking about the grandson of Rasulullah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Yazid had the audacity to say to the people at his core, when people were hearing the sermon and stuff, he was like, no, Muhammad came up with a man-made religion, like along those lines. And he claims to be, what? The representative, the caliph of Rasulullah.
The son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, or his father, as Muawiyah called himself Amir al-Mu'mineen. Anyway, but it's interesting talking about Imam Sajjad, because I know we want to move on. There's one or two things which I think we need to take into account. Okay, there's lessons that from the Imam's life, not putting aside Karbala, but in spite of Karbala, the Imam pushed forward and was known as the adornment of worshippers, Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, because Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein was a beautiful name. He was known as I love it. It's a beautiful name. And he was known. Imam Baqir alayhi salam said, and it's metaphorical, I presume. He said, I used to see my father do 1,000 rakats of prayer in the day and 1,000 in the night. He said he was so focused that he would sway in the wind like the leaf on the side of a corn plant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another hadith, for example, from Abu Hamza Thamali.
Okay.
He says, I once saw the Imam praying, and Imam was wearing an abba. He was wearing a cloak. The cloak slipped off his shoulder. After the salah, I said to him, Ya Imam, why didn't you put that cloak back? And he fix it up. It must be uncomfortable or something. Imam says, woe unto you. Do you not know who I'm standing in front of? So in one hadith, we're talking about the quantity of prayer. And in one hadith, we're talking about the quality of prayer. We have to say then, people say, nowadays, I'm so busy. I run a business. I have a family. I have social commitments. I have majalis to go to. I can't focus on my salah. If anyone has a right to mourn over Imam Hussein, it's Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. He was talking about majlis. Imam Sajjad was there. He was in Karbala. Does he make time for God? Yes. We talk about business. Imam Sajjad owned multiple businesses. He was a date farmer. He used to take his wealth, buy slaves, train them up, free them, and then reinvest the money back into the community. He used to use the money to go for Hajj. He used to send other people to Hajj. He used to use it for propagation. He, of course, invested money into the betterment of the Shias of the time. And we have the audacity to say, no, we're busy. Bro, what are you talking about? 5 minutes a day? Dhuhr, Asr, like the time, I know Muhammad Ali and Jumu'ah nights mentioned this, God bless him. He said that his favorite salah of the day is when he's at work. And I kind of get that. He said, because in that moment in the day, I kind of get a break from reality. I can do my thing in my own space.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel the same way as well. You're in your zone. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes we do not respect what the Imam left behind. Pearls of wisdom, lessons to learn from.
Well, I even remember something now. I heard of a lecture recently, in fact. So I haven't read this. I've heard this from a lecture from the pulpit. And the Imam, there came a time where, for example, there was lots of slavery happening.
Yeah.
So the Imam will actually go and purchase these slaves and make them, come towards his home. And he will come and look after them. And I think it's a beautiful story I'll share. And it goes along the lines of, so the Imam purchased, I think it was four servants.
Yeah.
and he made them come to his house. But when he was in his house, bro, they were not really serving the Imam. It's not like I'm higher than you and you're lower than me. It wasn't, none of that was happening. You know, let's just make that clear in case people misunderstand what servants mean in the house of the Imam. But at the same time, they were students of his.
Right.
So as much as they were working in his house, you know, he would teach them Islam.
Yeah.
And he would teach them supplications, how to do dua and things like that. There was even a time where, you know, there was a drought and people wanted rain. The Imam didn't pray for rain himself. He instructed his servants. He goes, I taught you how to do supplication and dua for rain. And they went out and they prayed for rain and it started raining. Yeah. And people start, you know, what's going on? And then there was other servants who now wanted to be where? In this house. They've heard so much about Imam Zayn al-Abidin that every servant at that time wanted to be in the house of Imam Sajjad. So Imam Sajjad, you know, was in a marketplace and he came across another servant. He bought this man. He paid for him, he freed the slave, he brought him to his house. Now he's a servant at the Imam's house. And, you know, the Imam calls out the name of his servant. So I forgot the name of the servant and then there's no response. The Imam calls out the name of the servant for the second time. For the second time, again, there's no response. The Imam calls out for the third time. He says the servant's name, you know, come here, O servant of Allah. The guy doesn't respond. The fourth time, the servant came rushing to the Imam. The Imam goes, what's going on? You know, I called you 4 times now, and it's on the 4th time you've shown up. What's happening? He goes, oh, Imam, you know, I was just testing your mercy. They said, there's no one as merciful as you. Wow. Because in the old house where I was, if I was not to come the first time, as soon as my master called me, I would have been, you know, tortured, reprimanded, you know, kicked out, all of this. But I was just testing the sweetness of your mercy. That even after 4 times, you've got no issue with me. Yeah, subhanallah, you know, the way he treated people is just beyond, you know, beyond belief.
Well, he had an immense taqwa. You know, Imam Hussein alayhi salam compares him to his son, to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. You know this story?
Yes.
And when he was young and the Imam was unwell, and he said, I rely on Allah. And the Imam Hussein said, you remind me of Nabi Ibrahim, because when the fire was when he was in the fire, he said, I rely on Allah.
Yes.
And we think about the taqwa of the Imam in different stages. From a young age, you know, the Imam was raised as an orphan. You know, his mother died when he was a few days old. And Shahrbanu was, as we know. And until the last days of the Imam.
She was Iranian, by the way. She was Persian. She was the first, I think, non-Arab to marry an Imam, by the way. So his mother was the first non-Arab to marry Imam al-Hussein, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So, you know, there's a lot to take forward. And of course, when we talk about, you know, the knowledge of the Imam is so important. The Qur'an says in Surah Al-Fatir, if I'm not mistaken, verse 28, that the most fearful of Allah's servants are the ones who are most learned. So then acquiring knowledge is very important. Acquiring knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we do that. Muharram, you know, we go majalis. Like for like, we talk about all the time Hadith Thaqalain. The Holy Prophet Sayed Ali behind the Qur'an and the Ahlul Bayt, hold onto them, do not go astray. Okay, so we talk about the Ahlul Bayt, but we also need to talk about the Holy Qur'an, because I guarantee you that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam live their lives day to day by the Qur'an. You know, and in this day and age now, Sayyid, we're seeing violation of the Qur'an. You know, in the news, of course, we knew a few weeks ago about the burning of the Holy Qur'an in Sweden. You sent me a video today which really messed with my head about people, a lady who was shredding pieces of the Qur'an, pages of the Qur'an into small pieces.
This was in Denmark. And she was wearing Woman Life Freedom, shredding the Qur'an.
Completely
pathetic.
Ruined my day.
Wallah.
It was really, really messed up. Like, where do we, like, because there are going to be people at home who are like, you know, firstly, people are going to say, why should we care? It's not happening here in the UK or wherever you're listening from. Secondly, what do we do? Like, people are going to be, so what? Or what can we do? There's nothing we can do. People are going to be like that all the time.
You know, I'm not saying Muslims are to blame for this, by the way. But I think if the majority of Muslims are not holding onto the Thaqalain, it's going to lead to things like this. Because if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying, you know, hold on to the Qur'an and my Ahlul Bayt. And if you were to hold on to both of them, you will never go astray. Why would someone like Salwan who, you know, very famously in Sweden, you know, sent shockwaves around the Muslim Ummah.
Yeah, yeah.
The entire world has been, you know, traumatized, I can say, by the scenes they saw when he burned the Quran. Why would they reach such a stage? Because if we be honest, the Salwan guy apparently was a Muslim.
Yeah, Iraqi.
Ex-Muslim Iraqi, you know, as crazy as it
But
sounds.
you don't claim him.
No way. No, he can be anywhere. He can be Karbala. He burn the Quran, go to hell. Yani, there's no way we claim anyone like that to be from the Ummah of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But ultimately, I think it's our fault as Muslims, because if we want to say, you know, we believe in the Thaqalain and we want to hold on to the Thaqalain, we are not abiding by the Thaqalain. We are abiding only possibly by the Ahl al-Bayt or possibly only by the Quran. And this goes to every sect in Islam, by the way. They choose either the Quran or, for example, the Shia choose only the Ahl al-Bayt.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to hold on to both. And the most important thing here is that we have to pass on the meaning of Quran to our children. And this is so important, Wallah al-Azim. You know, kids, if you don't teach them, you know, the love of Quran, and if you don't teach them, you know, the respect the Quran deserves from a very young age, bro, they can go up and become the new Salwan, whatever this guy's name is. Is it Salwan? Someone, yeah, it's Salwan. We can all be Salwan one day, because if we don't teach our children, our kids, you know, what it means to love and respect and revere and honor the Quran the way it's supposed to be, we can all become the new Salwans.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's very important that we don't become Salwan maybe in the next 10 years or 15 years, because it can happen to our children. Because we live here in the West.
Yeah.
And I say this why? Because if we live here in the West and we don't give Quran the respect it deserves and the respect it requires of us as Muslims, bro, we're going to go in a completely different direction. Because we have the West, who is what? Attacking anything with Islamic value. We have the West, who supports and stands behind anyone who goes against Islam. And for example, this whole Salwan thing in Sweden, who gave him permission to burn the Quran?
Yeah.
The Swedish courts.
Yeah, and if God forbid, if you sorry, bro, they have freedom of expression, bro. What about freedom of religious belief? If I want to believe in the Quran, if I want to believe in Islam, does that mean that I have no right for protection if someone violates my belief in religion? Do you know what I'm saying?
The problem is not just that. The problem is the double standards that the West has.
Yes.
Because
if you burn any other flag or any other book,
believe me, I read.
Game over.
You know. Was this like the first time permission for Quran burning was given in Sweden? Apparently, it wasn't. By the way,
really,
it just wasn't as big, because this one did it in front of a mosque, and there was press, and people were already aware of it, and there was like 1 week's notice. And because it involved the courts, and the courts gave him police protection, hence why it became so big. Otherwise, there's been here and there. But there's other people, for example, applying to burn the Torah. Other people applying to the courts to burn, for example, the rainbow flags and stuff like that.
Bro,
they disagree.
At the end of the day, religious texts, especially Abrahamic, monotheistic religious texts, are sacred to people.
Yep.
Why insult people? Let me say something you said.
Yeah. Well, if someone right now burns the Bible, does that not hurt us as Muslims?
Of course, we may reject and we may say it's been tampered with and interfered, but you hurt because you know that ultimately there may be some words in there which is the word of Allah, and beyond that as well, these are people, they're Ahl Kitab. You know what I mean? So people who are believers in the one true Lord, and that Lord being Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to defend them. They're brothers in humanity, equals in humanity. You know, at the end of the day, when we talk about the burning of the Quran, the violation of the Quran, there's been times in the past, even in early Islamic history, where the Quran was violated. When? Siffin. There were people who put Qur'ans on the spears. The army of Muawiyah, La'natullah alayh. When they put Qur'ans on a spear, you had haqq versus batil.
Yep.
Halal versus haram. Today, when we see people burning the Qur'an, we are reliving what Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he fought against the army of Muawiyah, what he had to go through. Or what are we going to do? Are we going to hold on to the Qur'an, or are we going to metaphorically join the army of Muawiyah in that sense and not say anything? Because there were those in the army of Muawiyah who weren't holding spears but who weren't condemning. How many Shia organizations are doing a lot about this? How many people are posting about this on their personal pages even? There's a jihad and nafs we have to do in this situation, and that is to be the bigger man and to say something, whether it's signing a petition, whether it's writing to your member of parliament, whether it's even in a conversation with your work colleagues. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine at work. We were talking about this, and I told him, I said, this is why I think it's wrong. This is why I think it's divisive for society. You know, but if we don't have these conversations, even on a very small grassroots level, the Muslim community will not know how to respond when more grave things happen. When this happens at our doorsteps, we won't know how to respond.
You know, you just mentioned, you know, the army of Muawiyah upon the Qur'an on spears. And my head, you know, speaking of burning of the Qur'an, my brain went past forward Ashura by, I think, 2-3 years where Yazid burned the Kaaba.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bro, it's crazy. Islamic history is crazy. I know my mind just went completely somewhere else.
No, you're right, yeah.
But honestly, like if we don't, you know, stand up for the Qur'an, and if we don't and I think we do stand up for the Qur'an, but the thing is we're not doing enough.
No, Sayed, the thing is we do sorry, bro. We do with our tongues.
Yeah, well, we're not doing something enough.
With our hearts and with our hands. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a hadith of the Prophet about I don't want to think, but it's like if you can't verbally state something, do it with your hands.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? And I know there's a full hadith and I don't want to quote it, but it's something I recognize that say something. If you can't say something, do something. Do you know what I mean? Like we have to do something. Like there's, you know, it starts from, like you said, it comes from fundamental. What are you doing at home? Love for the Qur'an.
Do you know what I really love about the Ashura procession here in London this year? Is that I don't know if you know, people are listening from London attended, or for those that don't know, this year the London Ashura procession, I think, like made it. I can call it an obligation where they ensured they gave a copy of the Qur'an of its cover to everyone who attended the Ashura procession, and people were either wearing it around their necks or holding it as they walk. And wallah, it just like made you feel like, you know, we are the party of God. You know, we are with Allah. Ultimately, we are with the Quran. The Ahlul Bayt and the Quran, ultimately.
Yeah.
And and it's very beautiful because people, number one, saw people holding up the Quran, the book of God, and that we stand against the burning of the Quran. But also, it took me a few years back.
I saw
when
a lady.
ISIS came.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know you want to say a point. Where we made a point here in London on the day of Ashura, on his possession, that Imam Hussein stands against the likes of ISIS.
You were there, yeah?
Yeah.
Same.
And I saw so much beauty in that. It was because even Western media were like, there's actual Muslims standing against ISIS. It was a shock to them.
It was a shock because they had a lot of people. They had ladies wearing black cloaks and men wearing black dashas and all of that, beards and all of that. And we came out and we said, no, we're anti-ISIS.
Yeah.
And it was a shock to Western media. You know, I saw a tweet on online. I'm not going to say X because I stick with Twitter, but I saw a tweet from some lady, non-Muslim, who posted a picture of the Holy Quran with the English translation very recently. It might have been from the procession or somewhere else. And she just said, I got handed this today. I'm going to give it a go. Just tweeted that. Bro, thousands and thousands of people replied supporting her, saying, good luck, sister. Good luck on your journey. May Allah reward you. May Allah bless you, guide you. You know, that is beautiful to see, firstly, because people encourage that journey. And then I followed her journey on thing because she started tweeting day by day what she's picking up, what she likes, what she's learning. Thinking, this is someone who last week didn't know about the Quran. Now she's reading through it. How many of us can say we've done that?
Yeah.
How many of us can say we've picked up the copy of the translation of the Holy Quran in English, we flicked through it, and we've obviously, with the Quran, you have to give it sacredness.
Of course.
You have to read it in the right environment. You have to do wudu. You have to respect what you're holding.
Be in a state of impurity.
Exactly. But you have to be conscious that you are reading the word of Allah, the stories, the lessons, the ahkam, everything you're reading. These are holy and very important texts, and we shouldn't let go of it, basically.
Well, you know, the Quran, they say, is the most read book, the most memorized book, the most printed book, the most respected book, the most revered book. And it's a book that doesn't contradict itself.
Yes.
And it's a book where people can't say it's not the divine words of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think the beauty in this is that even nowadays, where the West is against Islam or Quran or whatever the Quran teaches, is that now, you know, people are proving that Quran does not contradict science in so much ways. Even we have the examples of, for example, the universe expanding. Who would have known Rasulullah Muhammad 1,400 years ago is going to say the universe is expanding? Only science knew about this recently. Or, for example, the example of the two seas mixing.
Yeah.
Who would have known this? Who went sailing 1,400 years ago somewhere in the ocean? Who would have known this? That's why they used to say, for example, at his time, Muhammad was a magician. But now we've reached a point where we can't blame magic. Bro, this is reality. This is the divine words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. and the truth is with the Quran, bro. You open the Quran, there is nothing that contradicts anything that says. And you know, the West, I don't know if you've heard the term Sharia law before.
Yes.
You know, whenever I hear of Sharia law, I always remember like Fox News or Donald Trump or like, especially American TV.
Yeah.
Like they have something
PMP.
against the Sharia law. And then even Muslims are scared of Sharia law, by the way, because they think Sharia law means, oh my God, I need to like wear abaya, or my hands are going to get chopped off, or things like that. But reality is, bro, Sharia law is just halal and haram of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
And, you know, if
we're
the West...
meant to be living by Sharia law day to day, praying 5 times a day, not eating haram, not drinking alcohol. But that is the law of the Sharia.
Do you know why the West makes you fear Sharia law?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's because, for example, if we take our Sharia from the Quran tells you, Baba, don't gamble. The Quran tells you, don't get intoxicated.
Yeah.
The Quran tells you, for example, you know, don't do something that's not lawful for you.
Yeah.
You know, don't go towards haram. You know, lower your gate. Everything that's good for society.
Yourself and your soul.
Everything that makes you a good human being and makes a society, you know, wholesome with meaning, they're against. And subhanallah, you know, the values of the Quran is oppression, and the values of godless society are freedom.
Yeah.
It's crazy world. And I think it requires a discussion on this. A separate discussion. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so anything to add before we wrap up?
No, I think you guys said it all. It's just that every Muharram comes and every Muharram goes. And it seems like all we remember is that this and this and this happened, but we put away the importance of why it happened. So if we remember Imam Hussein's sacrifice, we also need to remember why Imam Hussein sacrificed everything he had and what we're doing to make it, to revive it, to let everyone know of this sacrifice.
Yeah.
So if Imam Hussein sacrificed himself for the betterment of Islam, and then Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam for 34 years of his life made sure that it stayed there, and all the Imams did the same, then we now need to come in and learn what they taught, so that we can also be part of that mission, that we're telling everyone this is the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why we're here on this earth, to do this and this and this. So that people like who want to burn the Quran one day might understand that, why am I burning the Quran, for example? Even if they don't believe in it, why do I need to burn it? To prove a point, that to show that, God doesn't exist, I can burn it. No. That if they understand that this is why the Quran is here, it's making children, for example, know the right and wrong behavior, or it's making adults do the right and wrong things and know the difference between right and wrong. Yeah. Maybe then they'll understand the significance of this book. That's not just a holy text, but it's a text that teaches.
Yeah.
Oh, and that text and that holy scripture, you know, the Quran is so important and so central to every Muslim in the world. You know, it doesn't matter what sect you adhere to. You know, it doesn't matter what level of iman you have. You know, it doesn't matter, let's say, for example, you know, whether you read it every other Friday, or you read it only in a Fatiha, or you read it maybe when a loved one has passed away. Bro, every Muslim takes the Quran as a form of guidance, and inshallah as a form of inspiration.
Amen.
And, you know, no matter how much people, they want to burn these Qurans. You know, Salwan, you can burn 50 of them. I know he's done it twice. You can burn 50 of them. At the end of the day, no one can erase the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because in Muslims, we emphasize on this memorizing thing.
Yeah.
You know, we ensure
that the
Quran is memorized generation after generation. That if you can burn all the copies, you know, you can discard them, you can dispose of them.
I don't think their goal is to eliminate the Quran off the face of the earth. I think it's for them, it's a stand of democracy and anti-oppression and freedom and anti
well, they haven't read the Quran.
Anti-establishmentarianism that Islam brings down on society today. So they're saying that the Quran, the establishment of Islam, is oppressive to Western civilization 1400 years later. So they're saying this is a symbol, a stand against religion, specifically Islam, and specifically the words of the Quran. What they fail to understand is that read the Quran, take it in, put your ego aside, think about what Allah is saying, think about the messages in the Quran, the values. Don't think about kill the believers wherever you see them. Bro, research.
Do not take that out of context.
Look at history. No. Research, look at context of the ayah. Look at different stories of the Holy Prophet and how each ayah and how each surah relates to the stories at the time and how they're still relevant today. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyway, inshallah khair. I mean, it's been a like a crazy few weeks in the media and in the news, but it's really important, inshallah, everyone at home, we learn from the lessons. You know, there's so many lessons that we can apply from the time of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam at times like this. We talked about the parallels between Siffin and what we see today. What side are we going to stand on? Who are we going to partner with? You know, when it comes to get haqq versus batil. Inshallah khair. Been a good discussion. We've literally gone full circle. Alhamdulillah, Ahlul Bayt and Qur'an.
It has, and I know there's so much we never touched on when it came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin, because he's an endless sea of lessons we can learn from. So I think one thing about this Qur'an is that, honestly, I know we said it so much times and probably said on previous podcasts, bro, Thaqalain, Qur'an and Ahlul Bayt. Do not let go of them. Do not make it one seem higher or less important than the other. At the end of the day, the Qur'an is more than just a book. It's a book that we can feel healing from. It's a book that when we read or recite or listen to the Qur'an, we can feel for some peace of mind. And it also offers us some form of protection. So inshallah, we hold on to this.
Inshallah.
So that we will never ever be led astray.
Ahsant. Yeah, so thank you for joining us as always. Sayed Ali.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
My heart, when it sees you and hears your voice. But inshallah, we need you here on another podcast.
And if anyone who's not seen Yasser's podcast, the last week before Muharram, Yasser joined Sayed Ali and I on, literally you can see his beautiful
56,
face.
55,
We talked about
episode 53?
something like that.
I think it was episode 53. Do tune in.
Anger and ego, we talked about that
lot.
topic. Really, really important one. If you haven't heard it, make sure you listen to it. It's a timeless discussion. Sayed Ali, thank you as always.
Thank you.
We will be back next week.
Inshallah, hit the subscribe button.
Smash it.
And
thank you everyone for your support in recent weeks. Obviously, I know it's been crazy. We've been putting out a lot. So I just wanted to thank everyone at home. And we'll be back next week. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned and we will see you then. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.